Good morning. It's really a great pleasure to have with us today for the fifth of 6 sessions live with architects, Astrid Piber, partner at UN Studio. Astrid earned her MSc in Advanced Architectural Design at Columbia University in New York, and before that a professional degree at the Technical University in Vienna. Astrid joined UN Studio 23 years ago in 1998, and time does fly. And Astrid has led projects from UN Studio's Shanghai office for many years, and for the last nearly a decade has been back in Amsterdam at the headquarters of UN Studio. We're grateful to have you today for your generosity to join us. The seminar that we're doing researches the frontiers of technology, focusing on a series of exemplar projects in contemporary practice. We're looking at 6 contemporary modalities of practice, working at the boundaries of experimentation of design and production and construction technologies. We focused on the envelope, architectural skins, as a mode of comparison between 6 projects. We've looked at the O14 Tower by Reiser Umemoto, Taikun Center by Herzog Demeron, Lisa Soho by Zaha Hadid Architects, Bloomberg Center by Morphosis, and in 2 weeks' time, the Mediatic project by Cloud9. So the project today, Galleria Citycentre, which is being focused on, is the theme of today's session for readings and the project as well, is to do with visuality and experience, the immersive effects and affects produced by the use of media as a material, and we're grateful that you join us today for your presentation, and this will be an interview by our students Jay Patel and Alexandra Satorska. Thank you very much, Astrid.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me to New York. I love it. Although I would prefer the physical presence, but yeah, I actually think it's good to be so connected. And I prepared a little tense presentation on Galleria Cheonan in South Korea that I worked on 2008 to 2010, so quite shortly, but it was a very speedy project. And yeah, today I want to tell you a little bit more about the project, but maybe first a little introduction to UN Studio and UN Sense, because we are working with our sister company together nowadays on many projects, not then when we worked on the Galleria, but somehow the Galleria and the changes in technology then, like how we integrated lighting technology in the buildings, triggered that we now have UN Sense as our daughter company, because in a way UN Studio is focusing on the built environment, and UN Sense is sort of the technology integrated in the built environment. And since we believe very much in an inclusive approach, in most of our projects we now have 2 parallel tracks developing both the physical space and the digital space at the same time. At the moment, we are in 6 locations, founded in Amsterdam by Ben van Berkel and Caroline Bos, as many of you know, and it has been growing since I joined 23 years ago, from 45 people to now we are approximately 300. And we like to look at our milestone project in a way as an identity that we carry within our firm, and that also symbolizes a little bit the belief in this connection between the physical world and the digital world, like in a way with the Erasmus Bridge, which was one of the first projects digitally designed and built also, like the technology of shipbuilding that we later developed further also in a second image where we worked on the Arnhem, the twisted column, also with a shipbuilding method to realize it. It's coming back. So this how you use technology to produce, like to design it and to produce architecture, a common thread And it also carries through to the Mercedes-Benz Museum, which is the cultural projects that we have developed in also a very short period, and which was maybe the first milestone of a digital mother model from which everything was constructed and built. And maybe on the right side, it's the most Far East project in China, or the biggest project to date that we have done in terms of square meters, and 2 high-rise towers in Hangzhou. But also there, the use of technology in the design, but also to execute it on a very good level was important to us. So there's a strong obsession with the process, a strong obsession with the knowledge of design and how to combine that, teach that within the studio, bring that from one project to the next, and sort of crossbreed knowledge through the different projects. And that brings me a bit to framing the context for the Galleria Citycentre, because it started in a time when we were at the same time also looking to experiment and looking at pavilions, movements of people, lighting, to experiment with the experience that you can have, like, for example, in a park or in a public installation, and how to create such a public space. And the second framing of that thought is also to create a place. And that's important in a project also in Raffles City that started in the same year as Galleria, but also in Galleria, because both were new city centers, new town centers. So how can you create a destination, create a place that's attractive and remains attractive to people and becomes sort of a melting pot for people as well. And the third experience that maybe frames it is more connected to the notion of a typology. What is a department store, or what used to be a department store in that time, and how did, especially in South Korea, it was the Japanese model of the department store that was quite common. But how could you look afresh at the typology? And I think we got inspired by this idea, and that's also in a project we did for Louis Vuitton in Japan, by this idea of the maison, the fashion house, that you create a sort of institution and create something that goes beyond the notion of a department store. And this coincides quite well. Like, why shouldn't be the experience a bit more like a museum and not the conventional experience? And this was one of the key diagrams when we started working on Galleria Citycentre, which were 4 plateaus of either 2, 3, 4 floors that were stacked on top of each other, because the program above ground that we had to deal with was 66,000 square meters. And we were looking what could be a simple organization following this idea of the maison du couture. And we grouped it according to different thematic themes, or like it was related to the kids, but also to culture, and then education for cooking classes on the top levels. And at the same time, we also looked at the typology in plan, because the typical mall or the typical department store would have of that size would have a central void and the escalators just to both sides. And what we tried was, okay, because we have the entrances basically on the corners, and those were the linkages to the urban context in a way. So we said, like, what if we move those escalators along this diagonal line? Then we can create, with pinching points, we can create this void that it has sort of a plateaus sticking in and plateaus carving out. So, and we called it the centrifugal void, like something that spirals in and spirals out at the same time.
Astrid, we're not seeing your screen, and it seems like you're talking about.
Not at all.
No.
Oh my God! For the whole time.
Yes, I thought you were talking, and then it's now in the last minute or so, it sounds like you're speaking to diagrams visually.
Do you see something now?
No.
Sorry. You see something?
Now we see your screen.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Sorry for that. Like, this was a bit the DNA.
Ah, yes, okay.
This was about the studio, the crossbreeding, the uplifting cultural experiences that we were looking at, and the place branding, and the Maison du Mode that I used the 3 references to explain where we started from. And then the quote, the plateaus, and the centrifugal void that which is difficult to understand if there's no image with it. But these diagrams, yeah, give a simple overview. And I thought it's nice to dig out these very old first models from the archive. Like you see some of these don't have nothing to do with the final design. But I think what we looked at from the beginning was this sort of dynamic void, or this flow on the inside, this need to create a sort of public space in this big volume that we needed to organize the space. And we looked, of course, at, yeah, how does light come in? Where do you want daylight in the Galleria Citycentre? And what would be the main connections and the main routes? And then we also started looking at what are these program zones? What are the more public areas? And how could we distribute them on the different plateaus to create interesting visual relationships, so that you are basically really triggered to also walk up to those 10 floors, because to make 10 levels of retail work is quite a challenge. And that's why this idea of the maisons and the main plateaus was like, okay, you have four main levels from which you can discover the rest of the building. We looked at, of course, like not introducing a confusing circulation, but it's basically very simple, following the principal rules. You have an escalator route upwards and one downwards, and you have the horizontal linkages. But what shifts is always the public program. And those are the more pink areas highlighted. They are always in a different position towards the void. And that's what creates the sort of holistic experience when you are routing around the building. And this idea of the dynamic flow, of course, was in the circulation, but we also translated it into the patterns of the ceiling. And why the ceiling? Because we wanted, once you enter the building, that you see, oh wow, there's a big void, and are triggered to spiral upwards, move upwards. So this is, for example, one of the plateaus with the cafe and with some exhibitions that you see from the top levels. And compared to a typical Korean department store, this looks very empty, because normally they would be stacked full with merchandise. And this was the first time, like the client was going for this concept to loosen it a little bit, and not only think of square meters of shelves, but to integrate other programs with it. So this idea of these flows, these uplifting elements, also helped us to integrate the technicalities, like the fire curtains, the air in, the fresh air in, but also the lighting, the sprinklers. They are all in these dark lines that you see in the ceiling. So it was a tool to guide people to create the effect, but also very technical in a way, nearly a tool to structure the building. So we went there to see also the mock-ups of additional lighting, for example, here, and also you see here the slots, because they are not yet painted. So you see the technical slots. And then once it was on site, this really structured each floor, where there would be the circulation area, but where would also be the area for the merchandise. It included also the design like lounges. And also there, it integrates a pattern and the play of light. The same in the art center that is included in the project on the second stack of floors. And this was also designed to be flexible. You saw it with the seating, but it's complete flexible seating. So it can also have a straight floor, can be used for multiple events. And here it's a sort of garden fair that now and then it's used. It's an art space, it's a presentation space. They show movies, but then even like this garden setting would be there. It's the first project also where we designed a supermarket for healthy food in the basement, and where we looked again at the dynamic flows and sort of framed the shelves and the routes again with this idea of lines in the ceiling and how they could link. Also created a daily with a food court with these islands, and designed the different booths and the strategy for it. And even the customer center in the interior, like where people would go to complain about things that were not done well in the shop or bring back what they purchased, were designed. So it was a very holistic design exercise, following this idea of the flows and creating these different levels of experiences. And what I said about placemaking before, it's also funny because if you see posts that people do there, the themes come back, and some of the patterns or ideas that we had, they create a place where people see themselves with fashion or with their kids, even in the bathrooms, like the wall decoration that we designed is a favorite thing for people to photograph. So it's not only that we perceive the whole shop as a sort of destination to come in and spend a few hours with your family, and you could do different things, but it also became, each element of it sort of became a unique attraction point and a recognizable space. And that was, of course, also important for the exterior, and for the exterior in a way, because it was the first project that was built in this new area of Geonan. It was fully under development. Like when we started in 2008, this was before the financial crisis. There was supposed to be a high-rise building that's completed before our shopping mall, and several other buildings, but they all stopped with the 2008 financial crisis and were put on hold. So actually the Geonan store was the first project that opened in December 2010. And it had to be a special, it had to give the whole area a special boost because it was visible from the high-speed train. It sort of established a new center of town and a new place to be. And that's why it was also important to create a special experience from outside. And what we as architects wanted is that it doesn't look like a box shopping mall, but that it creates something that engages the visitor, engages the people that are there. And there the idea was to look at the sort of create an optical illusion, like the flow that we created on the interior, like how could that be attractive on the outside without being mimicry, like without moving itself. And that's an idea that we worked in several projects. And maybe I just show you the series, and because the first one was also in South Korea. That was our first Asian project in Seoul, the Galleria, which was a transformation from this concrete building into this building where the client asked us to design a new dress. And within 9 months from design to completion. And so the idea was, what could we add as a dress, like not tear down anything, but we add these circular discs that create this screen. And they create this barrel de mur effect during daytime, because there's a foil in the glass. And during nighttime, they can be illuminated from the back. And that was the first media facade in that scale in South Korea. This was 2003, 2004, and caught quite some attraction. And recommended by Louis Vuitton, one of the tenants in that building, we started working 2006 in Kaohsiung on the shopping mall, not a department store, that really incorporated also daylight into the circulation area. So we were looking at this concave facade and looking at how can we create like not a circular array, but how could we create something radial that radiates that square where the building is located, and how can we create this nighttime effect where these vertical fins glow up because they are glass, they have just dots on it, and because the lighting fixture is integrated, it lights them up. And then if you move around the square, you would always perceive the building differently at day and nighttime, although it's static. And learning from these two previous examples, we were looking at Galleria Cheonan as something that's maybe also inspired by these art pieces from Bridget Riley, like where you have lines, and if you overlay them, and depending on how they are positioned, it would create this moire effect. And that was the effect that you can see in this series, but it's maybe also the technique of the media facade that's a completely different one. While we used like custom fixtures in the previous ones and integrated them, here we use the trick of back projection. So it's not using too many fixtures, but creating through projection this effect that it's a gigantic media wall. And I can start it. This was a little animation that we made in the design phase of this to see whether these vertical lines work. So if you are going around the plot, basically, you would constantly see those waves moving, although they aren't. They are basically vertical lines, and it's just the perception of those that creates that effect. And of course, we wanted to connect the notion of the facade to the interior. We didn't want to make the facade exactly the same as the interior, but the idea of flow and where you link the inside with the outside was important to us. So there, at the main plateaus, there's always a window to the outside, and it's open. Whereas where the sales area is, the facade is closed. And exactly where we have those plateaus connecting to the facade, we were looking to make these waves work with the vertical lines. And we had to test this idea, of course, not just in the computer model, but also in physical models. And on the right side, this is one we built in our model shop. It was 2.5 meters tall to really test whether it works and what the right distance between these two layers of the facade would be. And of course, it had to be calculated and considering the weight and the size of the facade, but it was quite important that the inner layer, that's basically a closed back wall, and that's the insulated layer, whereas the outer layer was basically a layer that just included crystal clear glass and was hanging on profiles in front of the structure, and creating thus a buffer space for the building with air that could be ventilated with openings as well, and could also help the building to be less overheated, and also like keep it warm in wintertime. This was during construction, and you see that here on the right side there's already the double layer on, so you see already the waves, whereas on that part of the facade they are just installing the glass there as well. And for example, where the two layers meet, like the back wall and the front wall, we were introducing a silk screen print so that you don't see immediately the structure behind, and that there's also a clear marking of the entrances of the building. So also with the canopy, these openings on top are a real window to a terrace. And what was important was also that if we have this monochrome effect during daytime, how do we create that lightened effect in a very subtle way, like not highlighting it all in color or painting it very strongly or doing advertisements on them, but we were really looking at what could be the content also to be displayed, and how do you create this blur of different colors. And we're basically looking at the distance, also where would light be included. We were building a mock-up with our lighting consultant together, seeing like there was a gap of 1.20 meters to the back wall, like what would be the spotlight, how big does a pixel have to be to create a sort of image that could be perceived from the opposite side of the street, or even from the railroad tracks. So that was a rendering that we did. And then the technical drawings a bit different, because first we always thought we would put the light shining on the, like shining a full dot, but we have then basically two pixels in each vertical stripe. And then, for example, here it's with a bigger angle. There it's a full pixel. So this was the test to, for example, here to have the more sharper image, where we wanted a more sharp display, and then here more blurred one where it would not be needed to show the high pixelation. Then exactly when in the evening times, it's of course prime shopping time. So when it starts slowly to light up the building, and it is also not fully lit, but creates like this atmospheric glow around the building. So basically also with the building lighting the public space and reducing the amount of lamp poles needed. And then there was a play also on what could be at special events, what could you display on the facade at those events. You also see here that where there are windows behind, you see the light shining through. That really gives the connections from the plateaus to the outside. And I have a link to a video, but you might know that one from it's just on I don't know, we don't have to fully go through that. Maybe just shortly. Which gives, different impressions from the entrance. This was really at the time when there was not so much developed around. Now it's already like lots of buildings in the neighborhoods that are built since 2010. So it's still quite well in use. We are still working with Hanwha, our client for that project, also on other projects. And what I know from them was also that this concept of integrating the different functions with a department store, like that are family related, that are sports related, having also the entrance through the parking levels to the store and connecting it to different places within the space. Like this is the terrace I talked before, also creating the outdoor roof, really allowed them to attract customers in the beginning, but still nowadays it's a real place in the city to come to.
Astrid, we don't see the video. We hear something, but we don't see the video. Maybe it's.
You don't see the video. I know why that is. Sorry. I think it's because I need to share that program, right?
That should do it.
Do you see now something?
We see the link to it, but not the video.
Funny. I'm sorry. It's like so much about technology. You still don't see it, right?
Not yet, no. Yes, we can see it.
No?
Yes.
No, sorry. Here you see the frit and the detailing of this curtain wall and double layered facade. And then the inside of it, basically where you see the different triangular profiles. And then also this light effect really following the waves from the illusion from the daytime, also emphasizing them at night. Yeah. Yeah, sorry for that you missed some visuals.
No problem.
I don't know, maybe you would like to start the interview and ask some questions.
Okay. Thank you so much for your presentation. That's really just so much information and so much visual communication about the project. Us not having the possibility of being in Korea to see the project. I think these videos and some of the more the descriptions of the dynamics of the building and its use of light and color are really very, very special, that we just don't have any other source to experience that. So thank you so much. I'll pass on well the microphone, so to speak, to Jay Patel and Alexandra Zatorska, who will conduct the interview. So Jay and Alexandra, over to you.
So we would like to, first of all, thank you. Say to you, thank you for taking out your time and be with us today, and your very insightful presentation. It means a lot and it helps a lot to understand the project. And starting with the questions, the first question we would like to ask you is regarding context. So the Galleria Citycentre project has successfully reclaimed public space within an already existing department store. So what kind of challenges did you and your team at UN Studio face in terms of building's historical context? And how might you have conceived the Galleria Citycentre project if it had been commissioned to be built as an entirely a new building?
It is an entirely new building.
It is?
Yeah.
Because I don't know, we read it that it was a department store before, and then you like UN
Oh,
Studio
it
took
was
over.
a complete new building, but you might have read that about the Galleria
The
in
other
Seoul.
Galleria City, yes.
Other Galleria was an existing building. The one with the circular disc, that existed already.
Okay, so sorry, maybe we confused between two Galleria projects.
No, and maybe it's confusing because it could, like the shape and size, like it could well have been a department store that was outdated. Like many of the bigger department stores have that format, but they are never 10 floors above ground. And that's why we introduced this big void.
Mhm. Okay, thank you. Over to you, Alexandra.
Absolutely, thank you. So also I want to thank you, and it's an honor speaking with you, who represents the studio that scrutinizes and experiments with human experience in built environment. My question is regarding the facade. Sylvia Levine, in her book Kissing Architecture, while describing the effect of the media facade, used term mise en scène, a theatrical staging technique that transfers audience to different time and context. The analogy to the cinematography is no random. The facade is made of frames that change with time of the day and media content. Mise en scène also refers to the actors that are defined or emphasized by scenography. What kind of scene the media facade sets for the viewers? How does the fusion of materiality and media affects them in respect to their activity, program, and didactic content?
Yeah, I think media facade is only something that works at nighttime, and actually it's only active while the building is active in the evening time. So it's not active the whole time, and that's why for us it was very important to have this effect, this cinematographic effect, not only at nighttime as a media facade, but also have it as a concept for the building skin, that it's something also static. It feels dynamic. It's like movie making in the early days, where you do every keyframe as a drawing, and it starts moving. And now what's happening is that the lines on the facade, they are static, they are there, but the viewer is moving around, and that creates the experience. And during nighttime, it's adding the layer of color and light, and emphasizing, maybe breaking down the building block that's very present during daytime, because you're not lighting everything up. And that's, for example, in the context of doing a media facade in Asia, something special, because normally you put all the light on one facade, and as much as possible, and as much color as possible, that we were dimming white light to have shades of gray, or only a bit of color and not everywhere, was quite exceptional in like 13 years ago or 12 years ago, and quite uncommon. So it created a sort of different layer and different attraction, also making it a canvas for people that have the skills to program different content on it. Because what you can do is basically every light you can control individually. So any content, either through images or programming, you could display there. And what we developed together with AG Licht and the lighting designers was also, and programmed on site, was a series of content for special times of the year, for special events that the client could choose from. And that was a first set of scenes, assuming, you can develop an endless number of it, like helping to evolve the building and its content.
Thank you. Over to Jay.
So I would like to ask question regarding a social factor. So in the Galleria Citycentre is set in the context of Southeast Asian behavioral tendencies in the larger commercial spaces, which enable community interaction hosted in privately owned public spaces. So those interactions create social and cultural experiences. So was this part of the research and the analysis of these social tendencies explored in the pre-design stages? And was there any involvement of collaboration with the sociologist, original studies, civic engagement in this development of social prototype?
Yeah, it wasn't research on the paper or on the desktop. It was, I would say, research by experience, because we learned, of course, from our client which types of tenants they thought could work. But we also learned, for example, from our project in Taiwan, where we realized that people went to date people into the bookshop. There was I forgot now the name. It started with E. It's a very famous bookshop in Taiwan, Escalate, or it has to come to my mind. But this was for us, mostly Europeans working on the project, like really surprising, like what importance such a bookshop or such a tenant would have. So that's why also, yeah, with the food court, with the daily, actually good food is establishing already like a social cohesion and level. And for example, that then there was a level that cooking classes was really important to attract a different type of audience at a different time of day, to have this education factor in as well. And it wasn't that we worked with a sociologist. I think it was looking at other stores and what worked there, and where would people gather and meet at it. And I think one thing that also worked out nicely, that one should do a study about, is like if a whole family goes to such a store, like they're not necessarily all interested in the same things, but if you offer it in a building, yeah, they can come back and have a coffee or meet again, and then go their way as well. So it's a bit more a holistic experience than maybe just a department store where you come and get one thing and do one thing, and like look more at how groups of family or groups of people even come to such a place.
Thank you. So my next question is regarding climate and the energy. So with its double skin facade and its materiality, which helps to reduce reflectivity and harsh sunlight, what climate and sustainability factors were considered in the design stages? Like, for example, how does the rain protection work on the facade, and like what are the other passive strategies were used in the project?
Yeah, the most important one was to keep heat out. So that's why a lot of areas are completely closed off, and no sunlight to enter. Actually, the void in the center was a long discussion whether it should be a void that has daylight or whether it's artificial lighting. And in the end, there were several tests done to like how daylight would impact the different plateaus and the areas. And in the end, it is a closed roof, for example, and it has artificial lighting. And then I think what like in comparison to the effect was one of the most important things was this idea of projecting the pixels. So not a media facade where you look into the LEDs and you need every 5 to 10 centimeters a LED to create a big image, but to use one and make a picture of 80 centimeters, or a dot is 80 centimeters by 80 centimeters. And you, of course, use less energy by that in relation to the effect.
Thank you so much. Over to Alexandra for next question.
Thank you. In some of the publications, Van der Berkel was quoted as "no image is permanent in the building." This declaration refers to illusion of time, scale, light, and people. Both perception and physical qualities are blurred in the experience of media augmenting the building's presence. We see this as the effect of sensitive layering and rotation of those qualities. Could you elaborate on the transitional, elusive, and possibly immersive moments between interior and the exterior and their connectivity? Maybe also how people are connected through that are in interior and passerbys, or the other connectivities?
I think I started the presentation from the interior and the idea of the plateaus, and the idea of the plateaus also already breaks down the scales, because you don't perceive maybe a 10-story building necessarily as 10 stories, but there are 4 main levels. And I think that the same we are doing on the facade, that you don't know how big is it, and the connection is sort of in this dynamic flows that enter from the plateau to the facade, or the other way around. So where you have the entrances, you are sort of transitioning inwards, and although it's a completely different concept, you feel guided by it. Huh? Whereas one is more vertical and you move around, the one on the inside is something that's moving you upwards. And then once you're on a plateau, you see the same facade from inside out, and you see also the vertical lines, and you link back to the context. It's sort of, you are immersed in the propeller in a way. And it spills you out on the different areas where you can then buy different products.
And the fact is amazing. Over to Jay.
So, like, the project responsiveness to building's occupants' behavioral tendencies can be seen in the interior zone of the building circulation and the lighting strategies. So on the other hand, the facade impacts the perception of passerby, as mentioned by Alexandra in the previous question. So what is the dialogue between the interior facade and the exterior facade in terms of lighting and those things?
Yeah, no, it's like where there's a public plateau, you have to, in the design phase, we were saying, yeah, it's like a drop of water going into a lake and creating the waves. Huh? And I think we saw the plateaus as something that spills out on the facade. So everywhere there's a plateau, it sort of starts a movement of these lines and these waves. And not all content scenarios at nighttime follow those waves, like some are also camouflaging over those waves, but there are many that play with these, yeah, the light that comes out of the plateaus, because you see it from outside, and then it spills over into the media content.
So
Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. So now my last question, it's gonna be regarding the influence of the current work. So the application of colored and polychromatic materials in the facades of some of the Studio's built projects shapes some of the key identity in the office projects. For example, the La Defense offices use polychromatic reflective materials, or Star Place with its media facade. We can see direct and indirect inspiration from these projects to the Galleria Center City. Can you please share with us the extent of influence of this project on the body of other works of Studio since completion of the project?
Yeah, the ones that you mentioned were prior, like they influenced Galleria, like Almere was where we experimented with the 3M foil in the facade and created this courtyard that's for people working there, that has this kaleidoscopic effect. And I think that very much influenced, because we were working on that in the studio, and we were thinking about the dress for the first Galleria. And there we used a different foil and also in different ways laminated with the glass, but we were also playing with this effect, with this dichroic effect. And for Kaohsiung, like for Star Place, this was like the light is fully in the fixture, the color is in the lighting fixture, and we didn't mix colored foils into the glass, it's more the dot frit. In Galleria Citycentre, it's also the color comes from the lighting fixture. It's a projection, as I showed. And I think when we did our first project in Wuhan in China, and it was an even larger mall, we were very worried that because it was also in a big development area, and we learned from the previous project, also Cheonan, that yeah, if you're building on a site where around there's also many high rises coming up, it's getting very, very dirty. The air is very dirty. So you have to be very aware of, yeah, how does it then look after some time, and how can you provide a good quality? And what we did there, we designed spheres. I'm not sure if you saw the project for, it's called Hanchi Wuhan. It has 40,000 of these spheres that are cut at different heights. And there we integrated like another laminated material, but the main idea there was to, okay, let's create fixtures that one person could lift in place and install, and have them produced in the factory under clean conditions so that it is completely sealed. And I think that was another mall where we experimented with that. And then I think we looked more into yeah, if we integrate lighting, can we not also integrate sources for yeah, gaining solar energy in the facade? And that's, for example, the office tower, which was a renovation in Seoul that was completed 2019, where we integrated PV cells in the frames for the windows. So there it was less about yeah, highlighting things by light. Also maybe that was of its time for the shopping center, but now we were much more triggered by this idea, how can you integrate PV and in an interesting way that it doesn't look like the standard PV, but it still serves the purpose of gaining energy. And in that sense, I think this Cheonan project or the previous ones influenced us a lot in also saying, yeah, there are technologies, they shouldn't be add-ons to the facade, but they should be integrated part, and you can design with them. Mm-hmm. And I think in a way it influenced every bigger building as well that we have been doing. Because we like to hide the technical stuff so that you don't see it, like, and find a place for example for the air outlets that they are part of the concept, for example.
Thank you. Also, I have also a question about influencing the current work regarding more the human behavior. If there is something that you learn from this after completion from this project that you could talk, if you talk about how people experience the building, and then, like, for instance, when you create the pavilions as some sort of prototypes to understand those relationships between built environment and human, is there something that you took from Galleria to the next projects?
Yeah, many things. Like I think there are even small projects that came up afterwards. Like we did one that's an installation for health, like where it's basically a colored wall where you can learn to de-stress, because it measures your heartbeat and it tells you calm down. It makes the music to calm you down, get the heartbeat down. And this maybe this idea of this interaction, yeah, that also as a user you could change things. I think that continues living in our project, and was maybe also a trigger why we are so interested in setting this up as a service with our UN Sense company.
Thank you. We truly appreciate your insights and being with us today.
I think it's great questions.
Wonderful answers. Thank you so much. Truly, we learned a lot.
Yeah, thank you so much, Astrid. Really, it's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Alexandra and Jay. I also learned a great deal about the project, some of the motivations, the design stages, some of the media that I mentioned earlier about the videos and photos which just aren't published. And I think from seeing projects, analyzing projects, discussing them, setting them into a discursive context from a distance as we are, which even without our pandemic and all of our remoteness, we are very much at a distance. So I'm grateful for you sharing all of this information. And I think that UN Sense is also really such a fascinating development in terms of what the service of an architect and what the professional product is of the architectural studio is really an advancement that I really look forward to seeing what comes out of UN Sense for years to come. I think it's really a wonderful expansion of the ways that architects think, and to channel that into a service. I'm very excited about the potential of that, especially in our times.
Oh. No, I'm actually very thankful that you made me dig into our archives, because I didn't realize, first, there's not much published about that project. It was a significant amount of time that not only I put in, but our team, and we are still working together. And it's very nice to remember all those times, even like that we are still in good contact with the same client, is a very, very good thing. And it triggered many ideas from the past that maybe, at the time we didn't see like that, or were maybe not so aware. And like afterwards, you're rethinking it. But there's for every project always a certain time slot when it's adequate and when it works. Like I think nowadays our approach would be probably very, very different. And that's also good, because that makes our cities also how they are. Like there's from every time something, and that you learn from with it. So yeah.
Well, grateful for you looking into those archives, and I think it demonstrates just that many architects think that our latest project is always going to be the best, and it's the one we always want to describe and show, a little bit like baby photos. Our recent endeavor is the most fresh. Yet sometimes they're influential projects that maybe didn't get the attention in its time, and I think this is a project which isn't so much about a media screen, but actually a much more deep set of effects. And looking back, I think it's really a sort of emblematic project of a certain kind of area of work about media and immersion and illusion. So when I selected this project, certainly it wasn't the most well published of UN Studio projects, but I think in a certain area of work, highly influential and really super achieved. So thank you very much for your time today.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. All the best. Take care, and hope to see you live sometime soon.
Yeah, hopefully. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Good luck with your seminar.
Bye-bye.